Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
I'm being asked to hand over my wedding dress and my entire wedding to my sister who turned up pregnant by her new boyfriend. I am just 1 week away from marrying Henry, the love of my life, and I am incredibly excited. When we got engaged, we initially decided to have a simple ceremony at the courthouse. We both thought it was the sensible thing to do, both financially and emotionally. It didn't make sense to us to spend a fortune in a single day, no matter how special it was. For us, what was really important was our commitment to each other, not an ostentatious celebration. We thought it was excessive to invest so much money in inviting and entertaining lots of people just to follow social conventions. We both believed that those resources could be better used to build our future together, whether for our house, travel, or savings. Everything changed when our families found out about the engagement. While they were happy for us, they didn't like the idea of a private ceremony at the courthouse. In fact, they strongly insisted that we have a big celebration. My parents were especially insistent about this. They explained to me that, as I was the first of their children to get married, they wanted to celebrate the moment properly. It was something they had imagined for years and they didn't want it to happen without the celebration they thought it deserved. You see, my older sister, Christina, is not married yet. As the younger sister, I didn't expect to get married first, but that's how things turned out. I guess this made my parents more eager to do something special for my wedding. They probably saw it as a unique opportunity, at least until it was Christina's turn. Although it wasn't what Henry and I had originally planned, seeing how important this wedding was to our loved ones made us reconsider our decision. In the end, we changed our minds to make them happy. Both parents joined us and contributed money for the celebration, while Henry and I covered the rest of the expenses. Over the past few months, I have invested countless hours and energy in planning this wedding. Every detail has been lovingly considered. One of the most special moments was working together with my future mother-in-law. We spent weeks visiting different places until we found the perfect one. It is a beautiful place that feels ideal for a special day, and finding it was a moment of joy for both of us. We have also hired an excellent catering service and finalized many other important details, from the flowers to the decorations. Each step has brought us closer to realizing our vision. Last week I went to buy my wedding dress, accompanied by my mother and my mother-in-law. It was something magical trying on dresses and imagining myself walking down the aisle in front of our loved ones. Throughout this process, my sister Christina was unable to join us. I really hoped she would be there to share this moment with me, but she told me she had other commitments. I was disappointed, but I didn't insist on an explanation. At the time, I assumed she really had something important to do, so I didn't think much of it. That is, until today. This morning my parents called me urgently asking me to come to their house. They sounded unusually cheerful and told me they had something important to share. Intrigued, I went to see them. As soon as I arrived, I could tell something was up. They were both beaming with happiness. My mother got straight to the point: Christina is pregnant. I was completely surprised. I hadn't heard a single rumor about Christina being in a serious relationship, so this news took me totally by surprise. My mother was ecstatic, describing my sister's pregnancy as a miracle and a blessing for our family. She explained that Christina hadn't even been trying to get pregnant, which made the news even more special for her. As my mother continued to talk excitedly about how wonderful this surprise was, my mind kept going round and round. I couldn't help but ask the obvious question: who is Christina dating? I honestly had no idea about this mysterious man. To give some context, my older sister Christina and I have never been very close. Since we were little, there has always been a certain distance between us. She rarely shows any interest in my life or calls me, which can be quite hurtful. For a long time I have believed that this stems from the fact that she is more academically brilliant. She considers herself superior to me, something she has made clear with her words. I still remember how she blamed me for it a few years ago, clearly showing that she looked down on me as a person. Unlike her, I have always been more of a dreamer, someone who has excelled in creative and artistic areas. As she said, my head was always in the clouds. I didn't go to a prestigious university or pursue a high-level career like her. And you know what? I'm at peace with my decisions. I've always been happy with what I have and what I've built for myself, even if it doesn't fit her definition of success. But for Christina, this seemed to be a reason to belittle me. When I met Henry and our relationship became serious, Christina never showed support. She constantly warned me that Henry would break my heart if I gave too much to the relationship. She always pressured me to focus on building a career instead of falling in love. Her comments were derogatory and minimized my happiness, as if my relationship wasn't worth it. Even when Henry and I got engaged, she barely showed any enthusiasm. All I received was a simple message of congratulations, no call, no flowers, no meaningful conversation, nothing. Despite her lack of warmth and support throughout my life, I still wanted to include her in my wedding, because she is important to me. I thought my wedding could be an opportunity to bridge the distance between us, and I even asked her to be one of my bridesmaids. To my disappointment, she declined the offer, saying that she didn't want to have any prominent role in the wedding and that she would be happy just being a guest. Although her words hurt me, I didn't insist on the matter. Throughout the wedding planning process, her lack of interest has been very evident. Every time I have sought her opinion on something, she has either rejected me or ignored me completely. The few times I have tried to include her at important moments, such as inviting her to come with me to buy the wedding dress, she has not shown up. And now my parents were telling me that my sister was pregnant, just like that. They went on to explain how Christina had met someone a few months ago and how happy she seemed with this man. Despite my complicated feelings towards Christina, I genuinely felt happy for her. A baby is a blessing, and if she had really found someone who made her happy, that was worth celebrating. I told my mother that I would call Christina later to congratulate her on the pregnancy. It seemed like the right thing to do, and I wanted to show her my support at such an important moment. But then my parents told me that they weren't finished. My father mentioned that there was something else they needed to discuss with me. He hesitated for a moment, which made me nervous, and then he let it out. Christina was planning to marry the father of her child, which made sense. Of course I would want to marry the person I am in love with and with whom I am expecting a child. But then my father added that they wanted me to give up my wedding to give it to Christina. I looked at them completely confused. "What do you mean, give up my wedding?" I asked, even though I already sensed the answer. My father went on to explain that, as they had already contributed money to my wedding plans, they couldn't afford to pay for Christina's wedding as well. Therefore, their solution was for me to turn my own wedding into Christina's wedding and let her take charge. My mother chimed in, saying that I should do this for my sister as a wedding gift. And that I could always have another wedding later on. She even pointed out that, since Henry and I originally wanted a courthouse wedding, maybe I could just go back to that plan and get married quietly now. That way, Christina could have the big celebration that my parents felt she deserved, especially with her pregnancy and new relationship. I was stunned to hear their suggestions. I looked at them both for a minute as I processed this information. Were my parents seriously asking me to give up my wedding for my sister? What was going on? All the hours I had spent planning, the excitement I had built up for this day, the compromises Henry and I had made to accommodate everyone's wishes. It was as if none of that mattered. When I finally found my voice, I asked them, "Have you lost your minds?" I reminded them that my wedding was literally in a week. This was not a casual plan that could be easily set aside. I had spent months of my life meticulously planning every detail of my wedding. I had invested my time, energy, and emotions in making this day special, not only for Henry and me, but also for them, for our families. I asked them, how can they even ask me to do something like this? Do they have any idea of all the money, time, and effort I've put into this? The invitations have already been sent out. The catering services have been hired. The venue is booked. My dress is reserved. What am I supposed to do now? Throw it all away for my sister? My words came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't care. I was completely astonished by their audacity. My mother, undeterred by my reaction, immediately responded with her reasoning. Christina is pregnant. She needs to get married first. Your wedding can wait. My father stepped in to support her, saying that they would never have made such a request if it wasn't really urgent. He even tried to reassure me by saying that it wouldn't take long to cancel my wedding invitations and adjust all the arrangements for Christina. To make matters worse, my mother then said, "Darling, your wedding dress isn't going anywhere. You can just give it to Christina instead." It was as if she thought that handing over the dress I had chosen for one of the most important days of my life to my sister would magically make me more agreeable to this crazy plan. My parents' complete lack of understanding or willingness to understand was exasperating. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and firmly told them that I was not going to give up on my wedding. My wedding venue, my dress, the months of planning, the countless hours I had invested in making this day special, everything would stay exactly as it was. My wedding was going to happen as planned. On hearing this, my father's face changed with anger. He stood up and practically shouted, "It's all the money you spent on this wedding, you have no right to go against us. If we're paying, we decide how the money is spent." His voice echoed throughout the room. My father continued, "Christina getting married is more important than you getting married. She is giving us our first grandchild, and that baby deserves to have a happy and stable family. This is bigger than you." My mother quickly intervened. Her tone, more insistent than pleading now. "You're not even pregnant. And you always said you didn't care about having a big wedding in the first place. You thought it was a waste of money, remember? So now you can just let Christina have it. She deserves to be celebrated for bringing our first grandchild into the family." My chest tightened as their words sank in. My marriage, my happiness, my hard work. It was all irrelevant to them because I wasn't giving them a grandchild. My parents, the people who were supposed to support me unconditionally, were making it clear that Christina and her unborn baby were their priority over me. I reminded them how they were the ones who insisted I have a big celebration in the first place. And now, just a week before my wedding, they were demanding that I give it up for my sister as if I were nothing. And another thing, I continued to stare at them both. They keep talking about how they paid for the wedding. Yes, you gave me money, but let's be clear about one thing. You explicitly told me it was a gift, not a loan. Not a way of controlling me, but a wedding gift. You weren't the only ones who contributed. Henry and I also paid for this wedding, and so did his parents. Do you think they're just going to sit back and let you hijack this whole event?" My mother opened her mouth to respond, but I interrupted her. "Let me be very clear," I said, my voice firm now. "This wedding is going to happen. My wedding. If you can't support that, then don't come. But don't think for a second that I'm going to cancel my wedding to please you or Christina. I won't let you take this away from me." On hearing this, my parents started shouting that I was being selfish and greedy for refusing their request. My father, still trying to defend his position, said, "Even if the money we gave you was a gift, we still have every right to ask you this. Your sister should get married before you. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." His tone was condescending, as if he were explaining something to a stubborn child rather than talking to an adult. My mother then intervened, her voice honeyed but full of emotional manipulation. "You could just talk to Henry and your in-laws about paying them back. I'm sure they don't understand, and they'd be willing to wait for you to save up in the future and pay them." I couldn't believe they were simply suggesting that I should bear the full financial and emotional weight of canceling the wedding for something that wasn't even my responsibility. Did they really not see how absurd they were being? Or did they simply not care? Then my mother dropped the ultimate guilt trip. "Anyone in your place would agree with this, because Christina is your family and she comes first." By this point, I was so furious I could barely see straight. Anger, pain, sheer disbelief at how unreasonable they were being. It was too much. I stood up, gathering my things, and stared at them both. "Listen," I said, my voice trembling with contained fury. "My wedding is in a week. Nothing you say or do is going to change that. I'm happy for Christina, I really am, but I'm not going to give up my wedding. Not for anyone." Since then, my parents have not stopped harassing me with messages and calls, insulting me and trying to pressure me into giving in to their demands. Honestly, I'm speechless. So, Reddit, am I the bad guy for not giving up my wedding for my pregnant sister? Update 1. My parents' favoritism towards Christina has always been present, but I never imagined it would go to this extreme. During our childhood, it was evident how they preferred her, always praising her achievements while minimizing my interests. However, asking me to give up my wedding to give it to her is something that goes beyond all limits. I never thought they would be capable of being so openly cruel. I am shocked by their sense of authority and how they have changed their behavior so suddenly. They gave me money for the wedding as a gift, supposedly out of love and support. Now, just because they gave me that money, they think they can control what I do with it, to the point of demanding that I cancel my wedding for Christina. In what universe is this fair? How could they not see how hurtful and irrational their request was? To those who ask if I have contacted Christina, yes, I tried. I called her after talking to my parents to congratulate her on her pregnancy and discuss the situation. However, she has not returned my calls. I don't know if she is avoiding me, if she is overwhelmed with her own issues, or if she is even aware of what our parents asked of me. This uncertainty only increases my frustration and confusion. When I returned home after that terrible conversation with my parents, I shared everything with Henry. I told him every detail, every word, every emotion. When I finished, he was furious. He couldn't believe that my parents would even consider making such a request of me. He has seen all the effort I have put into planning this wedding and knows how important it is to me. Seeing how they tried to take everything away from me to give it to Christina made him as outraged as I was. Henry loves me deeply, and seeing me so affected by my parents' behavior broke his heart. His first impulse was to confront them, make them see the error of their ways, and defend me. But I asked him not to. Although I appreciate his support and protective instincts, I didn't want the situation to escalate any further. The last thing we needed was for this painful moment to turn into a family war. Instead, Henry and I discussed it and made a decision. Although the money my parents gave us was a wedding gift, something they offered voluntarily and unconditionally, we have decided to return it. Legally, we are not obliged to do so, as a gift is a gift. But morally, we don't want their money to be a form of control over us. We don't want to feel indebted or give them the power to manipulate us in the future. Returning the money seems the only way to regain our independence and set clear limits in the face of their unreasonable demands. It was not an easy decision. We will have to use our savings to cover that amount and adjust our budget for a while. But Henry and I agree that it's worth it. We want to start our marriage without this toxic shadow hanging over us. My parents' actions have hurt me deeply, but Henry's unconditional support reminds me that I have someone who truly values and respects me. In the end, that's the most important thing. We will return their money as soon as possible, and when we do, I will feel relieved knowing that our wedding will be fully funded by us and Henry's parents. This won't erase the damage my parents have caused, but it will give us a fresh start and allow us to move forward without being tied to their demands. Update 2. I finally got to talk to Christina and everything made sense. It turns out that she was the one who orchestrated this whole situation. My sister, who has always seemed disinterested in my life, was the one who convinced my parents to ask me to give up my wedding. When she told me, she didn't even try to hide it, which left me completely astonished. Christina showed no remorse. She told me as if it were something perfectly normal that, because she was the older sister, our parents would ask me to make such a sacrifice for her. In fact, she seemed to believe that I should feel honored by the request, as if it were a great privilege to be able to give everything to her. When I asked her about it further, she explained her reasoning. Apparently, when she found out about the money our parents had given me for the wedding, and then when she got pregnant and decided to get married, she came up with this idea. She thought that since I already had the money and the arrangements in place, it wouldn't hurt me to let her use everything I had organized. According to her, it was the most practical and convenient solution for her situation. Her argument was that it would take too long for her to plan everything on her own, finding a venue, hiring services, organizing the details. It would be too much work, she said. Meanwhile, my plans were already in place, and if I simply stepped aside, she could take advantage of all my hard work. The venue, the catering, the dress, the flowers, everything could be hers, saving her work and worry. It was as if she thought my wedding should be a secondary concern because she had what she considered a more urgent situation, her pregnancy. I was speechless, trying to process her way of thinking. What struck me most was her sense of privilege. How she assumed that I would give in simply because she was the older one, as if that automatically made her needs more important than mine. I told her how selfish and inconsiderate it was to assume that I would give up my wedding without even consulting me first. Christina went on to argue that, unlike me, she has an important professional career and is too busy to worry about a silly wedding. She even mentioned that if she weren't pregnant, she wouldn't even consider getting married. I informed her that Henry and I were planning to give the money back to our parents, and I suggested that she could ask them for their own wedding. It seemed like the most reasonable suggestion, since it was their money and if they were so willing to support her, that would be the best way. Christina then had the nerve to ask me to help her plan her wedding. According to her, since I wasn't giving her mine, I should at least help her organize hers. Apparently, since I was more into that kind of thing, I would be perfect for the job. Without hesitation, I flatly refused. Her sense of entitlement and lack of gratitude were too much. I told her that if she needed help with her wedding, she could ask our parents. I had had enough of the whole situation and didn't want to get any more involved in her drama. At that point, I also decided to withdraw her invitation to my wedding. I didn't want her there, especially after everything she had said and done. Christina didn't even seem to mind, as she told me she had decided not to attend anyway. Update 3. Henry and I have already returned the money to my parents. We knew it was the right thing to do, especially after their behavior. To do this, we had to take out a small loan from Henry's parents, who were more than willing to help us. We are deeply grateful to them. We agreed to make monthly payments, and it is a relief to have their support during these difficult times. When we handed over the money to my parents, they didn't take it well at all. This time, Henry accompanied me and led the conversation. He began by berating them for trying to pressure me into giving up on our wedding. He explained to them how wrong it was to manipulate me and make me feel like I should sacrifice my happiness for my sister. After making it clear how hurtful and unfair their behavior was, Henry told them that he didn't want them at our wedding either. Up until that point, my parents still thought that my decision to uninvite them was a joke. However, after they got their money back and heard the truth directly from Henry, they were perplexed. They tried to defend themselves and argue, but Henry remained firm. He told them that they had already caused enough drama and tension. We didn't want that negativity on what should be the happiest day of our lives. He made it clear that, having returned their money, they no longer had any right to try to control us or manipulate the situation. It was then that my mother threatened to cut me out of their lives if we disinvited them from the wedding. She accused Henry and me of wanting to humiliate them by not allowing them to attend. I replied that she was right about one thing: I did want them to understand how absurd it was to demand that I give up my own wedding. I added that if they wanted to cut ties with me over this, I would accept their decision. Then Henry said something that deeply shocked me. He warned them that when we had children of our own, we would make sure they never met them. He explained that our future children did not deserve to have such selfish and manipulative grandparents in their lives. My parents were speechless. They were furious and ashamed, but there was nothing they could do. I cannot express how grateful I am to have Henry by my side. I don't know how I would have faced all this drama without him. His unconditional support confirms that I could not have found a better partner. Update 4. This week, Henry and I finally got married, and everything went wonderfully well. Despite all the drama and tension that preceded the big day, the wedding was exactly as we had dreamed it would be. We were able to enjoy our day surrounded by people who genuinely love and support us, without the negativity that my parents and Christina would surely have brought. For those who are wondering, no, my parents and Christina did not attend. I had uninvited them and, although it was a painful decision, I know it was the right one. There was a lot of emotional weight behind that choice, but the wedding day confirmed that it was the best thing for us. I'm not going to lie, there were moments when I missed them or wished things had been different, but their absence allowed us to truly enjoy the day without worrying about potential drama or hurtful comments. It was a day dedicated to Henry and me, to our love and commitment. Our friends, Henry's family, and our loved ones made the day perfect. And in the end, that was the only thing that really mattered.